Last time we looked at the piano keyboard and how these keys correspond to the Indian music system, the sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa. We also took a look at how the lehra, the Hamsadhwani lehra, is played on this and how it can be played in different keys in different what's called a patti in Hindustani music. So if the patti is C, then these white notes would be all the notes could be played for Shuddha Saregama Padanisa. And if it's C sharp, then the Saregama Padanisa would be Saregama Padanisa. So Raag Hamsadhwani had. Let's quickly just take a look at what that lehra, the tune was. The tune was, I'm going to use C sharp as my sa here, and it started with the high sa, this sa. So this is the madhya, medium octave, and this is where one spends most of the time in. This is the higher octave, this is the lower octave, and you do go into this. So a typical singer, at least I'm talking about singing here, would have a range of 2 octaves, this 1 octave, half of this octave, and half of the higher octave. So typically the range should be from the lower pa to the higher pa. So all the entire medium octave, and the up till the lower pa and up till the higher pa. And of course there are people with much higher ranges, like 3 octaves, even 4 octaves, and but that's rare. But yes, the average trained singer has easily a 2 octave range, and a trained good singer, that is, and somebody who's not trained, well, they have a very small range, usually less than 2 octaves, probably just about 1 octave or 1.5 octaves. So anyway, coming back to Hamsadhwani, and we started the high sa. The notes were so the timing was it's a little faster than that. The last part, Gapanisa, is faster. I just can't play that fast. So it would be something like so the notes of Hamsadhwani, the allowed notes of Hamsadhwani are only 5: sa, re, ga, pa, and ni. So this is what defines a rag. What are the allowed notes in it? And this is one of the characteristics of a rag. It has other things, but the most important thing is what are the allowed notes, right? So if I do a ma, if I do a dha, it just stops being Hamsadhwani at that point. So if I do a nope, not Hamsadhwani, just not up till Sarega. Yes, it was Hamsadhwani, but at ma it stopped being. If I do a wrong re or a wrong ga, even at that point it stops being Hamsadhwani. So the re that I use is the Shuddha re, and that is what is allowed. If I use the wrong re, so this is sa, Shuddha re, Shuddha ga, it's still Hamsadhwani at that point. But if I suddenly decide, or if I happen to play the wrong re, some other rag, not Hamsadhwani, I don't know what it is. It could be a bunch of other rags. Even this is Hamsadhwani is one of the rags. It could be a bunch of thousands of rags that it could be, but is definitely not Hamsadhwani. So what defines Hamsadhwani is, one, the number of notes in it, the which notes in it, sa, re, ga, pa, ni, and then how those notes can be used. Which notes can you rest on? When I say rest, it's like when I'm doing sa, re, ga, that's called resting, ending a phrase on a certain note. What is allowed, what is not allowed, and what combinations of notes are not allowed. Things like that is what defines a rag. So there are obviously, Hamsadhwani, like I told you, had 5 notes, but the number of notes in a rag can be as high as all the possible notes. So what are all the possible notes? The 12 possible notes. So we saw that last time, the Sarega Padhanisa, and the five more are the other versions of Regama Dhani. So Re and Ga have Komal versions. So this is Re, this is Komal Ga, this is Shuddha Ga, this is Komal Ga. Similarly with Dha and Ni. And the Ma is the only note which has a regular and a sharper version, or a Tivra version. This is Ma and this is Tivra Ma. So that is what all the 12 notes would be, all of these notes. And there is one very well known rag called Raag Basant Bahar, which has all these 12 notes. But just because it has all these 12 notes, you don't do them in any form or manner, in any sequence that you want. There are certain rules to that. And Raag Basant Bahar is actually a combination of two different rags, Raag Basant and Raag Bahar. And at any given point, you are actually singing either Basant or Bahar, and you're just switching between the two. So at any given point, since you're singing Basant or Bahar, you are following the rules for that rag. So you can only do certain things, not other things. Even though technically the rag has all 12 notes, you are using only a combination at a certain time. And what is the fewest number of rags? Is Sa a rag? No. Is Sa Re Ga a rag? Not what we know of. The rules, most people say that a rag has to have at least 5 notes, and there are dozens of very, very popular notes with rags with 5 notes in it. Hamsadhwani is one. There's just many, many more. Bhupali, Malkons, Kalavati, so many more. But less than 5, is that possible? Some people say no, but then there are rags, like there is a rag called Hindol. It has, basically speaking, only 4 notes. It's got Sa, Ga, Teevra-ma, Shuddha Dha, and Sa. But there are people who use a little bit of Ni in it, Shuddha Ni in it, and that makes it 5 notes. So technically it is 5 notes, but that 5th note, the Na, the Ni, is used very, very rarely, very, very fleetingly. So it's almost as good as not there. So depending on how you look at it, yes, it has 4 notes or 5 notes. You decide for yourself. And there are some people who never use the Ni at all, and for them it is 4 notes. But then there are other people, nah, you do need a Ni. So that's what it is. Then there is another rag called Malashri. It has only 3 notes. So no, not Sagama. So the Sagapa notes are that's it. So Sagapa, only 3 notes. How can you have a rag with 3 notes? But you do. And the description below in this video, you will find a link to a rendition of rag in Raag Malashri with just exactly these 3 notes. There are, and the person who talks about it does tell you that there are some people who use other notes in it. There are people who use a Ni, there are people who use a Dha, people who use a Re, and I've heard of other people, other very well-known, well-respected, knowledgeable people who use a Ma and a Ni in Malashri. But all of these people, even if they use other notes, the basic rag is just 3 notes. Sa, this is it. And then they might use a 1 note here, 1 note there once in a while, but 95% of the time they're sticking to these 3 notes. And when I say these 3 notes, it's not just these 3 notes. I mean, it is these 3 notes, but in multiple octaves. So if I have 3 notes in one octave, 3 notes in another octave, 3 notes in another octave, in 3 notes, in 3 different octaves, then I have technically 9 notes. So I can mix and match as necessary. So that's the number of notes, or exactly what notes goes into a rag. That is the biggest the most important way to specify what a rag is. And then the other thing is, how are those notes supposed to be used? One way I told you what is to be, which notes do you rest on, which notes do you quickly, fleetingly take once in a while. The other thing is, some rags are 5 notes going up, 7 notes coming down. So it's like I could have. So when I go from, so what does that mean? So I have something like so sa. If I do a re, I cannot go to ga. At that point, I have to come back to sa or come down. So that's called the aro or the ascent does not have re in it. So it could have the rag does have re, but once you do a re, you have to come down from re. You just cannot go up from re. That is how one has you can have the same set of the same scale but different rules, and with these different rules you have all kinds of different rags. Then there are basically rags which have almost the same set of rules also, but there will be a certain phrase that you do only in a certain rag, and that will define that rag. So for example, there's a rag called Gaur Sarang. You kind of do and that is what defines Gaur Sarang. Although it has the same set of notes as a bunch of other rags, there's that scale, the Yaman Kalyan scale, which is sa re. So it's got all the 7 Shuddha notes plus one extra ma, teevra-ma. That set of notes is a sort of a very, very, very popular scale, and there's a bunch of rags in that scale, and a lot of rags they differentiate themselves from the other rags just on a few phrases. If it's this one phrase, it's this rag. If it's that other phrase, then it's that rag. And of course, certain rags, just the scale itself will tell you what rag it is. Like Hamsadhvani, you do. You hear that, it is Hamsadhvani, but not so for some other rags. For example, I take another set of 5 notes. So I just switched out the ni of the Hamsadhvani and put in a dha instead. So sa, re, ga, pa, dha, sa. This is Raag Bhupali. Now Bhupali, that is the most common or well-known rag in that scale, but there are a bunch of other rags. There's a rag called Deshkar, which has the same set of notes, Sarega Padasa, but what is different about it then? It is which notes you use more often, how you use them. So if you stick to Sarega part more than the Gapadha part more, you are in Bhup. But if you kind of stick to the Gapadha, so if you do and you spend more time in the second half of the middle octave, you are mostly doing Deshkar at that point with a emphasis on the, where the Gapadha, and in Bhupali the emphasis on the is far less. You do a lot more ga and pa, so that tells you what rag it is. And there are other rags which have other things. For example, there's a rag called Jait Kalyan, in which you do a very little re. So and you when you coming back, you do. So there's another rag called Ordav Devgiri, again with the same scale. So it's very, very. It's not just notes dependent. It is how you treat those rags and how you treat those notes, and sometimes what other notes you do, kind of where you put in a touch of another note when you're doing a certain note. For example, there's a rag called Hamir, in which the signature phrase is Gamadha. It's except it's not exactly Gamadha, it's Gamadha. But you don't say that ni. I mean, even when you're saying it in Sargam, you say Gamadha, da. You start it. You start the dha at ni and then you say dha. So that is what a rag is. Set of notes and various kinds of rules which tell you how to use the notes. Of course, in our the Hindustani system, we have the time of day also, but that's a different matter. I mean, we're just talking about how, when you hear something, how do you know what rag it is? It is which notes are being used and how they're being used. That's what defines a rag. That's it.